Message from Starfleet Command, top priority.
You are listening to the TrekRanks podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. This is episode 171, featuring the top 5 game changers. Welcome, Star Trek fans. I am Jim Moorhouse. I'm the host of the TrekRanks podcast, and tonight, I think we have an epic episode in store for you. It's a sequel of sorts to a previous episode of TrekRanks. Tonight, we're doing the top 5 game changers. And about 2.5 years ago, way back on episode 107 of the TrekRanks podcast, more than 2.5 years ago, we were doing top 5 improvements, and this happened. I definitely had a few picks where afterwards I was just like, no, that's more. And I actually have on my long list top 5 game changers. And I was like, no, that's more of a game changer. I need to save that for game changers.
I really drew a distinction between what was a change versus what was an improvement.
Right, but I didn't. But I don't think I'm perfect, because a couple of these you can argue either way on a lot of these, I think. But yeah, I love this pick. This is a huge improvement. Also, could be a game changer. Well, we're going to do game changers in like 100 episodes, so that this one's far in the rearview mirror. Because I definitely thought of this one. It changed everything. So basically, Game Changer is going to be a sequel to this episode. We're going to do it at episode 171 or something. So that's the plan, okay?
Everybody see you there.
Book it, schedule it. Round 4, let's do it. Catherine. So as you just heard, during Top 5 Improvements, I had the great idea that at some point we should do a sequel to that episode and call it Game Changers. And I just threw it out there that we're going to do it in episode 171. And now, 2.5 years later plus, we are finally doing it. It's episode 171, Top 5 Game Changers. Talk about a temporal causality loop. That is what we got going. And we'll get into exactly what we mean by game changers and our diagnostic cycle in a minute. But right now, we need to introduce our excellent guest for tonight's show. First up, we've been trying to get her back on for a while and finally worked out, returning for her 8th overall TrekRanks assignment. It's Brooke Horton. Welcome back, Brooke.
It's wonderful to be here.
So glad to have you back. Love your experience. And back for his 2nd appearance. He was on earlier this year for Top 5 Scenes in Water. That was a fun one. Hailing us from the East Coast Corridor, it's Nathan Royster. Nathan, welcome back.
Greetings from USS Niagara in the Erie Quadrant.
Oh, that's fantastic. I forgot about that. Perfect for Scenes in Water previously. All right, this is going to be a great show. Let's start now with our TrekRanks recalibration.
You can recalibrate the regulators now.
Will do.
Okay, the TrekRanks Charter has 2 clauses. 1, we rank Trek so we can have a fun conversation about Star Trek. And 2, the ranks don't matter. We just use them as our framework to have a deep dive conversation about all the things we love about Star Trek. And as the Vulcan Master likes to tell us,
infinite diversity.
Infinite combinations.
There are no wrong answers at TrekRanks. This show is about sharing the things we love about Trek, and we love it all, from TOS to TNG, straight through to Enterprise and the Kelvin timeline, now Discovery, Picard, Strange New Worlds, Short Treks, Lower Decks, and Prodigy. It's all fair game here on the TrekRanks podcast.
Black alert. Black alert.
And a reminder that this episode of TrekRanks is current through the 4th season of Star Trek Lower Decks and 903 overall episodes of Star Trek across the past 57 years. And one final reminder that we use episodes as a shorthand term, but the 13 films are always in play as well.
Hailing frequencies open.
Thank you, Mr. Worf. You can hail me directly on Twitter at TrekRanks or at Enterprise NXtra. And on Blue Sky at TrekRanks, and you can see our extensive rankings of all the Treks at TrekRanks.com. And don't forget to call and leave us a message with your own picks at 609-512-LLAP. That's 609-512-5527. Okay, Brooke and Nathan, let everyone know how they can get a hold of you on Subspace. Brooke.
I am returning to Twitter after having taken a break during all the kerfuffle. And so you can find me at the Replimat.
Nathan, how about you, man?
I'm still at Twitter at Nathan_Royster, and I'm over on Blue Sky with just Nathan Royster.
Perfect. All right. We are ready to run our diagnostic cycle to get into today's show.
Computer, run a level 2 diagnostic.
Okay, so I talked about this at the top of the show, and we'll break it down a little bit here again. So way back in episode 107, we did top 5 improvements with Ross Webster and Catherine Robinson. And throughout our conversation, we kept kind of highlighting the nuances and differences potentially between like what's an improvement and what's a game changer. So here we are now. We're doing a sequel to that episode. We're talking game changers. And I'll say that in the improvements episode, for the most part, we were focused on stuff that existed in the show and was kind of improved upon. Whereas game changers, a little bit more about something new or something that really changed gears, maybe with a sharp left turn or some kind of adjustment. And of course, just to highlight it again, this topic can be about anything. So you can do in-universe picks or production picks where stuff focused on specific events or characters. And who cares if it's an improvement or a game changer? It's something you love about Star Trek. So we're going to talk about it right now. So let's get into our Prime Directives.
Do they know about Prime Directive? They know everything I know, sir.
And you're about to know everything we know about our Prime Directive. So, Brooke, let's start with you. How did you break this one down and come up with your picks?
This is the first time I've ever gone the route that I know we hear people say all the time on TrekRanks, which is I looked up the definition and I knew I had a pretty clear sense of what a game changer would be. If I were to use the word in conversation, I'd do it confidently, but I wanted to see the actual definition. And that did help because it's a newly introduced element or factor that changes an existing situation or activity in a significant way. And I felt like the calling out either a situation or an activity, that felt like it opened up the possibilities a little bit more, or at least sent my mind in a couple different directions. So when I made my list, I basically just tried to do a little bit of in-universe and out-of-universe. But as is always, I think you guys said this, Nathan, this might be what you said in your last one, which I just listened to today, vibes, like just the things that I want to talk about. So, But I did do some in-universe, some out-of-universe.
Okay, I wish I'd looked up what game changers means because that was informative. I had no idea. That's a great definition. That might have helped me. I love it. Okay, Nathan, how about you?
Yeah, I think you kind of said it, Jim, where it wasn't just there was an improvement on something, but the idea I had in my head was that this was something that opened up a new level for either a person or situation in universe or for Trek itself. So something that just kind of went beyond an improvement and was kind of more of a fork in the road where it just went into a completely new territory, and that Trek has kind of been shaped by it ever since.
Yeah, I like that new level. That's mine has a taste of that. So for my Prime Directive, my starting point, of course, I obviously started with avoiding anything that I did back in our top 5 improvement topics. So I made sure I was on a completely different track.
Same.
And as I started to compile my list, I realized that my picks were kind of gravitating to a specific area. So I decided that all 5 of my picks, and I love this because it's my favorite thing about Star Trek and talking about, I'm picking straight up 5 game-changing episodes of Star Trek. So I'm not being super specific or narrow. I'm just saying this episode was a game changer for this reason, and really redefined what Star Trek's doing and maybe even what, the show's capable of doing. I love my list.
Ooh,
it's super fun.
I'm excited to hear you elaborate on that.
I can't wait. All right, let's do it. Third Emoticon, introduce us to the order of things.
I am a Jem'Hadar. He is a Vorta. It is the order of things.
Thank you, Third Emoticon, as always. Everyone will start with their 5-word summary and a hashtag to tease their pick. Then we'll each reveal our game changer choice and the reasons we're highlighting it. And of course, everyone will pick an episode to associate with that pick. And after getting through 5 rounds of picks, we'll then get a few secondary system selections from everyone. And remember, if we have any duplicate picks, make sure you listen for the Defiant Torpedoes. Okay, Brooke, starting with you. Your number 5 pick for your top 5 game changers.
Okay. A disclaimer. I ended up with some accidental alliteration in my 5 words, but I want it to be really clear. I'm not trying to unseat the reigning king of alliteration. It just happened.
Yes, Mr. Rich Masters.
Yeah, but Rich, by no means am I coming for your title. Yeah. So my first pick, my number 5 pick, 5 words, finally footloose and fancy free. Hashtag photons be free. And I picked the Doctor's mobile emitter.
Yes.
My episode was Voyager Season 6, Episode 12, Blink of an Eye. And the mobile emitter was interesting for a number of reasons. It became a piece of technology that was so sought after by other species that the crew ran into that, like, it was the crux of the drama and like danger in a number of episodes where, you know, the Doctor's being kidnapped and held for ransom multiple times. So it adds this dramatic tension of the Doctor that almost seems like it gave him mortality, I guess, on the level of, you know, some of the what do we call them? The flesh and blood characters. But
sentient? No, not. What
sentient. Am I looking for?
Organic.
Organic. There we go.
That's the term they use, but I think it's denigrating.
Well, I don't want to use that then. Flesh and blood. But I picked it because for his character, had it not been introduced, his character would have lent itself to Voyager in a very different way. And I'd like to say a less impactful way, probably. And I picked Blink of an Eye because it's the one where he actually beams down to a planet because he's the only one that can. Yeah. And it's truly, he's a full-fledged member of the crew, which before the mobile emitter was impossible. So.
And he lives 3 years on the planet, right? That's an amazing thing. I love this. This is definitely always in consideration. And my thing about the mobile emitter and Voyager is I just salute the production and the producers for waiting, you know, good solid 2.5 seasons before they finally introduced something to get the Doctor out of sickbay. They really, they did. I mean, they would have been so tempting and easy to do that in the first or second season, and they waited all the way until Future's End to give him that freedom and that game-changing moment where he got the mobile emitter. Nathan, what's your take?
Yeah, I was exactly right about the timing. I mean, both in terms of like waiting on it, but also I think it was getting to the point where it's like, okay, he's stuck in sick bay. You know, he has to like ask the captain to turn on her monitor to talk to him, and just the frustration was And I think it was the perfect amount of time to establish that kind of constriction and frustration that the Doctor was experiencing, and especially as the crew is just kind of treating him as an object. And I think about the point where that point had been made was exactly when they made that transition. So it was a great timing. And even just the way Robert Picardo just steps out of the car and you can just almost feel the sun and breeze that he's experiencing for the first time. It was just like a really great introduction to somebody who had just been really in a cage for 2 years.
Such a great point. That moment, they really capture the visceral feeling for the Doctor being out in the sun. I love that. Awesome. Okay, Nathan, what's your number 5 pick?
All right. 5 words. A year preparing this station. Hashtag not so toothless. And I am highlighting the upgrades to Deep Space Nine's defenses in Deep Space Nine, The Way of the Warrior. So on 2 levels. The first is just in the battle with the Klingons, where the last time Deep Space Nine had been kind of under threat, it was clearly it just kind of didn't have great defenses in Emissary. And then suddenly, as the Klingons are approaching that, like Cisco, where they've been hinting at these kind of upgrades they've been doing in the station throughout the episode, and then suddenly it's revealed that this is basically a fortress to be reckoned with. And so it both is a game changer in terms of the showdown with the Klingons.
Target the lead ships. Ready even-numbered photon launchers. Aye, sir. Fire on my mark. Fire! Ready odd-numbered launchers. Fire!
They're still closing.
Ready phases. Standing by. Fire!
But I think also it's a game changer in production in terms of the new level in which space battles, what they would look like in Trek. Like we've had some really great one-on-one interactions in Wrath of Khan, Undiscovered Country, etc. But I think in Deep Space Nine, just to have like an entire fleet and just have this kind of larger battle experiencing, and it looks fantastic. And I think I've never been like a huge fan of the space battles that appeared during the Dominion War. I just felt kind of overwhelmed and lost. But in this one, it was huge, it was big, it was dramatic, but it was still something that could be kept up with, and I think really raised the level of what that would look like for Trek going forward.
Yeah, and in its purest form, just how cool those looked on the pylons. Yeah. They did such a good job with, I mean, the first time you saw those, first you see the phasers and you see the photon torpedoes, and I'm just blown away by how that made you feel the first time you saw it. Absolute game changer for Deep Space Nine, the series and the station, and what they could do. I love it. Brooke, what's your take?
It actually just brings to mind a question, something that I'd never contemplated, but the Cardassians are so militant and militarized. It's odd that the station wasn't decked out in, like, why do you think that was just because no one in the quadrant dared mess with the Cardassians?
It's a good question. I mean, that's as good a reason as any, yeah. And it's a mining station, and they probably had ships assigned to it and circling it at high volume, so they thought that's probably the defense. That's a good question. I don't know, but Starfleet sure made a difference. Holy crap! Incredible. Okay, all right. It's my round 5 pick. My first episode choice. 5 words and a hashtag. Wish I'd give it away in the first 2 words. Data's Day in the Life, hashtag game-changing nuance. And of course, it's TNG Season 4, Episode 11, Data's Day. And I just feel like this episode is a major game changer for Trek. It's really the original Lower Decks episode. Just a really super casual episode about nothing that happens to be framed around this kind of classically boring Trek story in which the crew's escorting an ambassador to a peace negotiation. But of course, it's Ambassador T'Pel, and she fooled you. And if that intro sounds familiar, it's because I said the exact same thing back on episode 126, top 5 characters that fooled you. I went to check my notes and realized, I can just put that right back into this episode, because I actually wrote, it's a huge game changer. So I just love this. This is, for me, like the first 100% straight up day in the life episode of Star Trek. And, the first episode of Lower Decks, where Data's just walking around worried about Keiko and Miles' wedding. And all the Ron in the neutral zone stuff is like happening in the background, right? Like Picard's walking out of a corridor, says something, walks away. You don't know what's going on. Just like Lower Decks. I love it. This one really, I think, changed the kind of way they can tell stories, and really the kind of stories that would be approved by studio executives, and helping to expand the universe. So love it. Data's Day. Brooke, what's your take?
No, that's awesome. I think that's an excellent pick, and I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective, but it is. It's the Lower Decks. It's the Lower Decks original mold. It's brilliant.
An episode about nothing, Nathan.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when you have these kind of non-human actors who are supposed to have this like outsider perspective on humanity, it's always kind of some throwaway conversation. But like with this, it was Data's like genuine interaction with kind of the human experience, and it was more of a show, not tell, which was just like incredibly powerful. And I like what you said too about there's always this temptation to kind of build out the universe rather than to kind of go in deeper and just really explore the interiority of the characters. And then my last note is the other game change is elevating Miles O'Brien and Keiko to being kind of key characters in Trek.
Yeah, that's actually an excellent point. Total game changer for Miles, for sure.
And they, like, you could argue, though, they're the perfect example of day in the life characters for like all the rest of the time that they're on screen. And that's, I think, some reason people bitch about it is like they're just kind of normal people, normal problems. So yeah, that's a game changer for them for sure.
Totally normal, except for all those times they died and then came back to life. So. And their daughter going through
a perfectly normal life experience.
Totally normal. Okay, let's go to round 4. Brooke, what's your pick?
Okay, my 5 words. The holodeck comes to life. #- waste extraction duty. And my pick is the augmented reality wall outside the universe as a production element. I'm picking Strange New Worlds Season 1, Episode 2, Children of the Comet.
Love it.
This is obviously the immersive, like 70 by 30 AR wall that like wraps around and the actors get to actually play inside of it. And for me, I think it was Children of the Comet in Strange New Worlds that like it really, really wowed me. Of course, it was used for Discovery Season 4 as well. But it's really fascinating because I won't pretend to know the first thing about filmmaking, making television, acting, any of it. But from every account we read when that first rolled out, it changed the game for everyone in front of the camera. And it also changed the game for everyone behind the camera. And then the people completely behind the scenes, the people that the content would get passed off to. And they were able to work on it in a far more efficient way. It sounds like creativity could just abound in a way that it couldn't before. And so, I mean, the obvious choices for the actors, it's really a holodeck. Like who wouldn't be really excited to all of a sudden be immersed in this thing instead of, in front of a potential green screen. So it feels like it's cutting edge technology that obviously has gone on to be used by Disney and all these other franchises. And I really like when Star Trek is on the cutting edge of technology, which it's always been, but it was really cool that we were on the cutting edge of this. And like, what an appropriate franchise to utilize this on, because it lets you go anywhere in the universe, anywhere you can dream up.
Massive game changer. I love this pick. I can't believe I didn't think of it. I don't know if anybody's seen this. One of the behind the scenes visual effects features, I guess it's on Strange New Worlds Season 2. They show a bit on this, and I was always struggling with, like, how does this actually work? Like, because all the characters, you can't all stand somewhere where the screen looks right for you if you're standing in different places, because it's not going to adjust to your eyesight. But they have like a framing inside the camera that changes what's in the background of the camera as it's shooting and moving. So they show a scene where I think it's engineering, and there's like a console is part of the visual effects video wall. But when you move the camera to the right as far as you can now see behind the console. And it's crazy when you think about that. So you're a character that can be walking up to a console, and then at a certain angle, when you look at it from 45 degrees, now you can see behind that console.
It's got to be so trippy. It's got to be so trippy.
Unbelievable to me. That blew me away when I finally kind of realized, oh shit, that's the level this thing is at. And it just looks great, and it's super cool. I love all the production stuff. So I like thinking about how they have to be a little more organized because you can't just build a set and then shoot on it for 3 days and have something else going on at the same time, because you have to shoot everything in that kind of one moment and have it all mapped out, and then reset that room, because there's only one room with the VR wall, for the next thing that's going to get all those shots. Really cool.
Do you know what just came to mind as you were describing that sort of like rotational view? I was thinking about in Duet, where it was like, for Starfleet technology. Yep, yeah, where exactly they zoomed in on the gull, and then they could and when I watched that, I'm like, how the heck, if that's just an image, like how the hell are you wrapping around another body, but hey, apparently
that was the 20th century, Brooke. You can do it in the 21st century now. Nathan, what's your take on this? I love it.
Well, I'm definitely learning. I know I had been I'd seen this technology in some other franchises and was not aware of Trek's using of it, but just hearing this conversation, it makes a lot of sense, especially with just the scenery of Strange New Worlds just being just beautiful. Yeah. I mean, like the color and just the kind of creativity with which some of these worlds they go into. I mean, I don't know if this was used for this episode, but I feel like that in Charades, where Nurse Chapel is speaking with those interdimensional aliens, and just that immersive, this beautiful setting that just really set the stage. And now I have a better idea of where that's coming from.
That's a great usage. And just quick shout out to your choice. Children of the Comet is perfect usage of this set. It's incredible, and probably one of the first times they were really using it in detail. Love that episode. One of my favorites.
And Nathan, you can go out, and if you want to see how it fit into Star Trek, you can go find some really cool little like marketing or publicity videos where the cast and crew are like gushing about using it because they're so excited. So yeah, you could definitely go take a peek at some of that.
Right.
Okay, Nathan, what's your round 4 pick?
All right, 5 words. Trek's affirmation of gay rights, hashtag in the 90s. And I'm bringing up Next Generation's The Outcast.
I love it. So great. Such a great pick.
I mean, I think just even I'm not that old, but I mean, it was just kind of how quickly the public had kind of turned and just kind of affirming that, to some LGBT citizens. And I just think just with the timing of it, I mean, not to make excuses for anybody, but still to have Trek just put itself out there on an issue that was dramatically underwater at the time, and to say, no, we're going to be really coming out strong about this. The allegory was just almost impossible to miss. And I know that, like, in retrospect, some people have kind of, some things have not kind of aged well, like, a non-gender conforming species, how strange. It's like, okay, that's actually a thing. But I think nonetheless, for Trek to kind of be going out and to say that a lot of the values that had been affirmed in the original series in the early days of TNG, that they were going to continue to like boldly go and press out that horizon, that like any group of people that have been marginalized or oppressed or just mistreated in the society, they were going to do something that would shine a light on that. And I think just the consistency of their values, and frankly, maybe under some producers that maybe were not like keen on that, I'm glad this episode got made.
Yeah, Jerry Taylor got this made, and this is a literal game changer. This, man, I just, to put yourself in the 1991, probably 1992 for this episode, maybe. They just don't see this on TV at that time. And yeah, you can pick it apart with the lens of 2023 where we are now, but that's not fair. That's not the right thing to do. Yeah. You can do that for, basically anybody who lived prior to 1950. I don't want to see their scorecard, okay? Because that's not going to really stand up well. But that's not a fair thing to do to move the goalpost on people like that. So at the time, what this episode did and said, you can't change the speech that she has at the end. What makes you think you can dictate the way people love each other? Boom. That's all you need to know. That's what this episode says, does, and put right on TV in the early 1990s to kind of change. Oh yeah, why are people trying to dictate that? Who cares? They love each other the same way you do, for comfort, for warmth, for affection. It's incredible. And don't get lost in that place where it's like, well, yeah, but all these things. Yeah. Don't do that. Just don't do that.
All of the loving things that you do with each other, that is what we do. And for that, we are called misfits and deviants and criminals. What right do you have to punish us? What right do you have to change us? What makes you think you can dictate how people love each other?
You put it so well, and you said it wasn't on TV at the time, but being perfectly honest, it wasn't in my life anywhere at the time. It wasn't just that it wasn't something I was seeing on TV. It was nothing that I was being introduced to either by people around me, by my education. So yeah, it introduced a topic that I think for a lot of people, it might have been their first, I don't know, I don't want to say their first foray into really thinking about things from that perspective. And Yeah, it's wonderful.
It's really, it's a fair way to say it. I mean, it probably was it probably helped form some of my views at that time. And I was 24, 25, and
yeah,
you just, in certain areas, you're just not as exposed to it. Yep, game changer. I love it. Really, really awesome pick. Okay. Oh, it's me. Round 4. Let's close it out. 5 words and a hashtag. This vessel reset Trek perception. Hashtag game-changing format. And I'm basically picking, I'll say the episode in a minute, but I'm basically picking Lower Decks in its entirety as an overall game changer for many, many reasons. First, returning Trek to the animated world and showing that there's really no limits to what can be done in terms of how they tell stories. But for me, it's their ability to put these completely realized and massive episodes of Star Trek that really translate 1-to-1 in any comparison to live action Trek. And they're doing it in 22 minutes. And I've said this a million times that I always feared that when Lower Decks came, that 22 minutes would just not do it for me. And I would be like, the episodes would end and I'd be like, man, I wish it was longer. I need more of that. I have never once felt that way at the end of a Lower Decks episode. I'm always completely satisfied. And then lastly, I made this in the previous point, but taking episodes like First Contact and literally telling a story that honestly is as packed and epic in content, and the visual effects of any Star Trek movie ever. That to me is a complete game changer for the perception of Star Trek and how those stories can be told. First Contact, just if you're not remembering, go back and catch it. It's just a motion picture worthy 22-minute season finale of Lower Deck season 2. Just incredible. And so I debated really hard on which episode to pick. So I was thinking Wedge Douche, First Contact, or either one of the Crisis Point episodes. And ultimately, I decided, I teased it in my 5 words and a hashtag. I'm picking the first episode of Lower Decks that when it ended, I was just sitting there thinking, wow, that literally could have been an episode of TNG, point for point, moment to moment, even all the jokes. And it's season 1, episode 4, Moist Vessel. That's right, Moist Vessel, which is just the most unbelievable title, an incredible accomplishment. And for me, Moist Vessel just feels like a lost episode of TNG. Brooke, so Lower Decks and Moist Vessel is my pick.
Is that the first pick of Moist Vessel?
I think I probably picked it during the Lower Decks season 1 show. In fact, I know I did because I love that episode.
Nope. No notes on this.
Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, both in terms of like just the scale and the majesty of it, but like we were talking about with Data's Day 2, the ability to really drill in on these characters in terms of, their experience, their motivations, kind of their emotional process. And like you said, in 22 minutes. I mean, it's just remarkable. And I'm just kind of even like checking off, mentally some of the moments where like the silly cartoon that's kind of having fun with Star Trek has like literally just kind of like teared me up in just some of what the characters have gone through and just some of their experiences. And just an incredible, not only creativity, but even just discipline from Mike McMahon to be able to just economize everything that is sweeping and beautiful and awesome about Trek into 22 minutes. I mean, that is just an amazing feat right there. You
could probably pin Mike McMahon on there as like a game changer himself, because when you said you were satisfied at the end of every episode, I feel like that's intentional. Like that is a very thoughtful human, a fan making sure that happens.
That's Mike McMahon. And we talked about that a lot in our last episode, season 4 moments of Lower Decks, where we highlighted Mike McMahon. The guy's a gift to Star Trek. Truly incredible. Okay.
Why don't you try the soup instead?
Here we go. Soup Brown. Brooke, what's your pick?
I wanted to think of something food related or soup related. I couldn't.
That's not what the Soup Brown's about. You don't have to do
that. I know, but I've never achieved it. And this was not the week to do it because I don't think there's probably any game-changing soup. But 5 words, Chicago mobsters of the 20s, hashtag the highest form of flattery. And my pick is the not infrequent accidental contamination of alien societies.
Oh my God.
So I'm choosing TOS Season 2, Episode 20, obviously, a piece of the action. There are other great examples of this. We've got Patterns of Force in TOS and Who Watches the Watchers and Homeward. And I just re-listened. No, I didn't just re-listen. Tropes. That was recently, right?
Oh, yeah. It was a couple episodes ago.
Yeah. And it got me, listening to that episode got me thinking about tropes. And I don't really want to call this contamination a trope. Because
it is, though. It's a good storytelling mechanism for Trek.
It is, but it feels like sometimes I think of tropes as being something you're like, oh, this again. But it would be really, really frequent that this would happen to you. Like, so in that way, it doesn't feel like a trope. Right. It just feels like an eventuality that you'd constantly be running into. I mean, if you're a member of a warp-capable species or some kind of collective, like no matter how careful you are, you're going to leave your mark somewhere. And what's so interesting about it is it's the first episode I can think of where we really explored the butterfly effect, and that in conjunction with the Prime Directive. And it was a really, like, I know it was a silly episode in some ways and there was comedy, but like the content itself is kind of serious in like the kind of impact that a small action or mistake can make. And TOS love to wrap things up with a bow. And so we get to the end of this episode and they don't give you a bow. Instead, McCoy makes McCoy makes a mistake and he leaves his communicator. And so it kind of leaves us like on our heels, knowing that this is going to happen again, I think. Granted, I wasn't watching it when it was coming out, I saw it after I'd seen other Star Trek, but we definitely returned to that idea multiple times. And in every case, it's a game changer.
So that's nice material.
It ought to be. It cost a bundle.
Get out of them.
Hey.
I said.
Just a minute.
You too. Get out of the clothes. Nobody's gonna put the bag on me anymore.
Spectacular. I mean, just talking about a piece of the action. All-time classic episode of Star Trek. I love this. This is a really great way to think about that. I mean, it is a trope, and it's a great trope, and it's absolute game changer in terms of that narrative. Nathan, what's your take?
Yeah, and it just has me thinking about the context, the kind of Cold War context of the times in which this is being broadcast to an audience that's part of a superpower that has the ability to kind of be reaching out and like kind of affecting other nations, other cultures, and so forth. And for Trek at the time, especially in a very heady post-war time, to be able to say, you know what, we can't anticipate the consequences of this, and that, like you said, Brooke, the butterfly effect of even these little choices, and at least that consistent Prime Directive ethic to just exercise that humility and to say that there's a natural organic development that's going on, and we have no way of anticipating, even under the best of intentions, what the impact is going to be, and throw into the private little war where just everything just starts kind of spiraling out of control. And that's just like a really fascinating perspective for that time in American geopolitics.
Yeah. And I mean, to take a culture that is literally developing this number one rule about not impacting other societies, and I mean, it spins them on their head. I mean, it sends it just, when you were describing a fork in the road earlier, Nathan, in your Prime Directive, I thought, like, I was picturing like a dam, in a river, and like there's a natural evolution, a natural flow. And then, these little actions can completely route and reroute a whole culture. I think that's why it makes them so impactful when it's the Federation that kind of stumbles into this trope.
Damn, that was deep, you two. I love it. All right. All-time classic, a piece of the action. And Nathan, what's your super round pick?
All right, super roundup. First opportunity for Trek's Godfather, #Wishy Directed Nemesis. And I'm citing the TNG's The Offspring as the directorial debut of Jonathan Frakes.
Oh man, that's such a huge game changer. I wish he had directed Nemesis too. Keep going, Nathan. Sorry.
But I mean, I was just going over the list, and actually, I misplaced the list. But I mean, among others that he did, I mean, just even recently, Those Old Scientists, No Win Scenario, in which he's also just doing double duty with just the absolute like heaviest, deepest that we've seen Riker portrayed. And I think just that it's not just that this is somebody that has been very capable in directing the franchise, but I think somebody that, I mean, honestly, another hashtag might have just been like, it's a good episode when Sub Rosa notwithstanding.
Yeah, Sub Rosa is the
but I think
there.
Nonetheless that like this is like one of the only figures in Trek where it's almost just universally that this is somebody who understands the franchise and that you're putting things in good hands. Yeah. And I think that there's just this reassurance that almost everybody has, and the fact that he really is just this figure that I think really just does kind of speak to the heart of the franchise, just as a person, and his enthusiasm, for Trek, for the fans, and for his work. There's just a real sense of stewardship that he really exercises, and it all began with one of the all-time greats, The Offspring.
We must strive to be more than we are, Law. It does not matter that we will never reach our ultimate goal. The effort yields its own rewards.
You are wise, Father.
It is the difference between knowledge and experience.
Incredible. You could not have summarized it any better than that. I love the word stewardship because it's not just his directing. It's not just his portrayal of Riker. There's all this extra stuff that he's done for the franchise, that is just immeasurable. Absolute game changer. It all began with The Offspring. And you just said he directed two. I mean, they're probably my two favorite episodes of New Trek since 2017, but they're two of my all-time favorites, No Win Scenario and Those Old Scientists. Incredible. Brooke, what's your take?
I feel like you have covered, Nathan, that was really, really well put. And he's I think meeting him and getting him to see him and hear him speak at the conventions. And I tend to, granted, I didn't cut my teeth on TNG, but I tend to think of Jonathan Frakes the way we now know Jonathan Frakes more than even Riker, to be honest. He's been that significant in, behind the camera and at the conventions, and you see him participating in charity events. And, he's just a wonderful human and steward. That was perfect. That was absolutely perfect choice.
Yep. Immeasurable stewardship. I love it. Okay, let's close out round 3. My super round pick is a little bit of an outlier, and I'm picking it as much for what it represents in Trek as a possibility for the future of Trek and the kinds of stories that I think can still be done. And even though it has already, changed and had a big effect and given us a lot already, but I don't think it's done being a game changer yet, is what I'm trying to say. Its game-changing impact is far from fully realized. Here we go. 5 words and a hashtag. Crafty narrative altered the future, hashtag. Game-changing potential. And this is Short Trek Season 1, Episode 2, Calypso, which for me is an emotional masterpiece. I love this episode. And what it's given us so far is a far future of Star Trek that hadn't been decided when Michael Chabon, the writer of this episode, wrote it. So it previewed that far future that, of course, we ended up seeing in Discovery Season 3 and 4. Of course, it gave us Zora and the introduction of that character, which we've also now seen in Deep Ways in Season 4. And it also gave us this kind of new narrative form that obviously short treks were designed to tell these independent one-off stories with unique characters that we'd never met before. But this is really the only 1 out of 10. And maybe the animated episode, Ephraim and Dot, is a little bit not seen before, but this is really the only one that told us this story completely independent, kind of everything else in Trek, except for, of course, the setting is on an empty Discovery. But there's no uniformed Starfleet officers. First ever episode without uniformed Starfleet officers, and it's kind of a miracle that this story even exists. And I love the parallels with Odysseus and the journey home for Kraft, trying to get home to Alcor 4, and it's just the most truly standalone, independent Star Trek episode ever, and it was 18 minutes long, so it feels a lot more complete than some of the short treks. I love it, and I think it's a game changer, and I don't think its story is done being told in terms of its impact. Brooke, what's your take?
I hope not. I hope it's not done.
Yeah.
It feels like when you see people's lists, this either falls like right at the top or near the bottom, just depending on what kind of story they like to have told. But you said it beautifully. I really don't have too much more to add, except I know TrekRanks has done top 5 episode titles, and I think this is another one that belongs in a list, like a short list of very, very good titles for what it carries. Calypso being the nymph and the Odyssey, and it was another very, very thoughtful title.
Really, really smart.
which is very much carrying on, like, I think one of the grand traditions of Star Trek.
How about top 5 one-word titles? We should do that one.
Ooh,
maybe we'll do that in episode 223. How about that? Okay, we're doing it. We just did it again, people. We're going to keep this going. Nathan, what's your take?
Yeah, maybe I'll start throwing out like topics to try to oblige ourselves. But no, and the crazy thing is that these were episodes, and especially Calypso, where just people are just like really hungry for it, and it's rare to kind of get something that the audience like is demanding that is not in some way just kind of going back to the well. That this was something completely refreshing, and that people just saw like a lot of great possibility in. And I think too, it's just another level of, we've had interactions with kind of cyborgs and internet and artificial intelligence, and to yet still kind of get to this new level in which there is this emotional component that is developed, and that was explored further in Discovery season 4. It's one of those things where you're like, oh yeah, artificial intelligence, we've been there, and it's yet still continues to be fresh and groundbreaking.
It really doesn't remind me of Twilight Zone in content or tone per se, but in a way it kind of does.
It does, actually.
The fact that it can tell a really thoughtful story, but closed in, because I mean, the ultimate in episodic science fiction was Twilight Zone, right? I mean, there's truly no continuity that I can think of. No. But they told wonderful stories that like hit you in the gut, and so when I go back and think about Calypso, it's like, this was just beautiful science fiction.
This is, it's absolutely Twilight Zone-esque, and I'm not sure I really thought of that before.
Yeah, somebody kind of entering into this kind of weird space and discovering it, and I think like from another perspective, there could even have been like some concern of like, well, what is Calypso's intentions, and is there going to be something more possessive, and yet just again that emotional depth to her just is able to let go.
Yep.
Not to dwell on this too much, I never had that feeling like Zora was up to something. I always thought, if anything, it was going to be Kraft. So and that's just Michael Chabon, because he's an incredible storyteller.
Yeah, and that you can have that kind of storytelling and it not be like, well, someone's plotting something or somebody's but it's just like, these are two people just really experiencing life together.
Well, there was no antagonist except, right? I mean, the absence,
was the time and the
journey, and that's so rare.
Yep. Okay, here we go. Round 2. Brooke, what do you got? 5 words.
New boon for interstellar commerce. # self-sustaining verterons. And I picked the in-universe, the Bajoran wormhole. I went with Deep Space Nine season 1, episode 11, the Nagus, which, if you think about what that one's about, it's probably pretty obvious, but that would be the one where the Grand Nagus convenes this like summit on Deep Space Nine at Quarks, and he brings together these like I get the impression it's like the movers and the shakers of Ferengi commerce, or like the guys who have a reputation for like cold calling. I don't know, the guys who he wants to explore this like completely untapped market. And I thought it was a really cool element of Deep Space Nine. I mean, we could go on and on about Deep Space Nine being groundbreaking and game changing in like every element, but part of it is that it was a station and people came to them, and introducing the wormhole, it was, colonists, it was trade, it was a war, it was like conquerors, it changed the game for the Alpha Quadrant significantly. And I really can't imagine Deep Space Nine without it, considering it was introduced in episode 1. But it was a really big game changer for the in-universe Federation, and that's why I picked it.
Love it. I don't think that came up in improvements at all. I think that's a great pick. Again, not one that I thought of, but yeah, of course, the worm. I thought about picking Deep Space Nine as a game changer just because it's a different kind of series, right? Yeah. It's an outpost instead of a ship going places. And in fact, I mentioned that in my secondary systems in the improvements episode. So somehow wormhole never even crossed my mind. What a game changer being at the mouth of a wormhole is. I love it. Nathan, what's your take?
Yeah, because we're still in the kind of TNG universe there, and to have something that completely opens up, like, well, where are you going to get these kind of maybe new aliens or new situations? And it's right there, and it doesn't feel like we just kind of slap this on, and all right, we got an entrance for new experiences.
For sure.
Like it is so well integrated into Bajor itself, and not to mention the wormhole alien / prophets, and that it's just, again, it's not just this kind of kind of easy in for things, but like from the very beginning, it's something that's just integrated into the culture of that area and into the larger situation in the quadrant.
And it's like, it's even more poignant when you think about the fact that Voyager was going to kick off before too long, and you fling them to another quadrant and draw this really clear picture of what it's like to be in another quadrant, right? That it would take, 60, 70 odd years to get to the Gamma Quadrant. So it was a huge contrast.
And that sound you just heard was, we've had the Grand Nagus picked a few times on TrekRanks, but we've never had the episode The Nagus picked before. So we just played our gong, signifying a first-time choice on TrekRanks. Nice job, Brooke.
I've always wanted to get one of them. That's awesome.
Incredible. All right, Nathan, what's your round 2 pick?
All right, 5 words. Music appropriate for Space's majesty. Hashtag you're humming it already. And I want to bring up Jerry Goldsmith composing the score for the motion picture.
Oh, fantastic pick. Yeah. That's never occurred to me. What a game changer. Oh my God.
Yeah, because there's a lot of just delight. I mean, I love the music from the original series, and it definitely does bring in kind of elements of an orchestra, but my personal favorite being the Corbomite maneuver, bringing in the horns and the xylophone. But I think the motion picture really not only elevated the music for Star Trek, but that idea of what does Star Trek soundtrack sound like? Like, this is what really establishes something that is just carried throughout the franchise ever since then. You have what becomes the Next Generation's theme, but I think just something that really captures the grandeur of the journey that they're on. And I'm not a big music person, can speak to it, but I did appreciate just elements that sounded like Holst's planets, just kind of working their way into it, especially for the outer planets. And I think just one of my favorite things about the motion picture, I sometimes joke around that like half of the movie is a Jerry Goldsmith music video. I don't mean it in a bad way.
And your issue with that is?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, why do you think that's an insult? Like it's the best, some of the best parts.
Exactly.
In complete seriousness, like it's a beautiful soundtrack, and it sets the stage for everything going forward and Jerry's just continued involvement with Voyager, First Contact. But like, yeah, I think this is the first time that the sound of Trek musically is established.
This is probably going to be my favorite pick. I didn't think of this, but I mean, absolute game changer. And not because of the TOS music is spectacular, right? It stands the test of time. It's iconic. It's unique. It's incredible what Gerald Fried and those guys did and Sol Kaplan. But, you know, Jerry Goldsmith, this is, you know, 2 years after Star Wars. This is kind of, in 2 years after Superman. So it's kind of when motion picture soundtracks are becoming a thing. And he's Oscar nominated for this. And this is, you know, I listened to this album, you know, 1,000 times when I was 12 years old. I own this album. I played it over and over again. The Klingon theme, everything. You said it. It sounds like a motion picture. And it set the course for what all the rest of the movie soundtracks was going to be. It was right at the beginning of kind of the launch of, you know, real epic kind of summer movie soundtracks. I love it. Brooke, what's your take?
Yeah, it's making me think. I feel like I'm just pitching past TrekRanks episodes at this point, but it makes me think about the episode when the ship was a character, because in the motion picture there is so much. It is a very visual movie, but there are so many times where the score is the predominant like sensory input at that moment, because there isn't a ton to look at, or it informs what you're looking at. And I'm kind of also thinking of Nathan, like, I would say that in the same way Jonathan Frakes has been a steward in his kind of sphere, I think Jerry Goldsmith was a steward in his contributions too. He really seemed to know how to convey the feeling of Star Trek.
Yeah. That's episode 78, top 5 episodes where the ship is a character, available for you wherever you listen to your podcast. Okay, fantastic choice. Let's go. This is me, right? I'm next. Yep, looking at my list. Okay, round 2, my final pick. 5 words and a hashtag. Secrets add darkness and layers. Hashtag game-changing intrigue. My episode is Deep Space Nine, Season 2, Episode 22, The Wire. And my pick is why this episode's a game changer is the Obsidian Order and the secret police states. And say whatever you want about Section 31 and the Obsidian Order and the Tal Shiar and now the BIA. I'll tell you what that is in a second if you're not sure. But the introduction of intelligence agencies in Trek for me was an absolute game changer, and I love it. It's a great one. It started right here with Deep Space Nine Season 2 masterpiece, The Wire, and the Obsidian Order, still the king of all these intelligence agencies in Trek. And I just love the way they add this intrigue and these layers of subterfuge that just add to the general storytelling and the framing of the Star Trek universe. And sorry, not sorry. Anytime they show up, I'm into it. My ears perk up. I lean in a little bit. They're my favorite. So we got the Cardassians, Obsidian Order, of course, Section 31 with Earth, the Vulcans, the Vashar, the Romulans, of course, Tal Shiar and the Zhat Vash. And now the BIA, the Beta Z Intelligence Agency, featured in pathological fallacies and lower decks, which I just love. So that's my pick. Brooke, what's your take?
That is an awesome pick. And I honestly, until you laid it out, I don't think I realized that was the first. I would say it is, yep, I agree, the most superior. Yep. And I would be really, really curious to know who named.
So I have the story. So it's,
okay.
They were going to call it the Gray Order. But because Babylon 5 was doing the Grey Council, if my memory is correct.
Grey Council.
Yeah, the Grey Council. It was right around the same time. And so Robert Hewitt Wolf, the great Robert Hewitt Wolf, wrote this episode, and he realized, shit, I need to change it. And he was bummed. And then he went through a bunch of different versions of Grey, and he realized the Obsidian Order is way better than the Grey Order. Yeah. Jesus Christ, it's not even close. So he kind of landed one of those fortunate mishaps. So I love it. Nathan.
Yeah, because I remember when I first watched Deep Space Nine, I just kind of was tearing through it. And on the rewatch, realizing how much this episode sets the table.
Right, it does.
For Garrick, the existence of the Obsidian Order, the eventual annihilation of the Obsidian Order, and just like so much just kind of has its roots here. And one of my favorite kind of, I mean, I'm just amazed thinking about the sophistication of some of the writers, where you have these intelligence agencies which are convinced and have this reputation for like being able to project their power out, and a lot of the time not so much. I mean, like I said, they get wiped out by the Dominion. So what they end up doing instead is just kind of turning on their own populations, right, because that is something that they are equipped to control.
Yeah. I hope you don't have one of these little bugs hidden in my quarters.
Should I?
Transmission complete.
Hold on. This won't take long.
Take your time.
Quark, you idiot!
Is something wrong?
Is something wrong? I'm ruined. My career is over.
What did I do?
You and your damn requisition code. It's for classified biotechnology, Quark. Even the cursed number is classified. Where did you get it? No, don't tell me. I don't want to know. If I'm lucky, I can still get through this with my skin intact. Maybe they won't trace the request back to me.
Who won't?
The Obsidian Order.
Nice talking to you, Bahika. We'll have to do it again sometime.
The Obsidian Order. That certainly complicates things.
Who are they?
They're the ever-vigilant eyes and ears of the Cardassian Empire.
And I think just having that element of just like the role of like an unaccountable intelligence agency and where it ends up going is just fantastic insight from Trek's writers.
I love that. Great perspective on it. Very unique. Okay, round one. Here we go. Brooke, what's your number one game changer?
Begin round one.
Okay. Character conflict creates charismatic chemistry.
I love it.
I didn't really have to think about that one. That one just happened. It was just
roll off your tongue.
Those words just made sense. Hashtag IDIC. And my number one pick is we kind of alluded to it, but Deep Space Nine, and specifically the deviation from Roddenberry's golden rule, that shows needed to be written intentionally without conflict, and the fact that Deep Space Nine was thoughtfully written with conflict. This is obviously a game changer. I mean, it's when you think about all of the shows that we've had, it's easy to think of Deep Space Nine as being like one of the first, and it was. But at the time, there had been like almost 300 episodes of Star Trek at that point. So you can absolutely, going back to the definition of game changer, to me, that's enough precedent, right? To say this is exactly how this is progressing. We have these shows, there isn't conflict. And then they changed it up completely. And when I think of infinite diversity and infinite combinations, it's easy to use it as a talking point, but when you actually try to apply it to real life, which for me, that's what Star Trek has always done. I watched it when I was forming opinions. I was a kid. And so it was teaching me. And infinite diversity to me, applicable to real life, is conflict. It's differences of opinion and cultural upbringing, and I mean everything. The Ferengi capitalism, versus a federation with no currency. I mean, it's so when Deep Space Nine was intentional about creating a space for conflict, I really think it was the most beautiful thing they could have done. It definitely completely changed Star Trek from that point forward. And I like when they have a quote here that I jotted down that Michael Piller said, by putting people on a space station where they were forced to confront the kinds of issues that people in space stations are not forced to confront, in a series that focuses on a starship like the Enterprise, you live week by week. You never have to stay and deal with the issues that you've raised. But by focusing on a space station, you create a show about commitment. It's like the difference between a one-night stand and a marriage. On Deep Space Nine, whatever you decide has consequences the following week. So it's about taking responsibility for your decisions and the consequences of your acts. And
so good.
This is I only read that this week, but it reverberated back through being a kid and watching Deep Space Nine, because I think had I grew up going to church, and had I started with TNG, I have a feeling that my perspective would have been sort of like let me sit at the knee of, at the feet of these lofty characters that I could aspire to be like, and Picard but I'm grateful that wasn't the first thing I watched, because I felt like Deep Space Nine for me was relatable because it had tension and it felt like real life, and it felt like real life on a space station, and it felt like real life with infinite diversity. And so to have all that baked together and baked into, my formative years, it was hugely significant. And conflict has been some of the best elements of Star Trek since then. So I give all credit. So I guess in a way I am picking all of Deep Space Nine, but specifically, deviating from Roddenberry's golden rule.
Okay, but if you had to choose one episode.
So it's funny. I really wanted, because this could have fit in so many episodes. I was like, oh, I should try to pick one that hasn't been picked. But I didn't.
You already did. No, you already did.
I know. That was so perfect, because I picked Emissary, which is not at all original. But it's the first one where you get ultimate dichotomies. You get Quark is as skeezy as he's gonna get, and Kira's as acerbic as she's gonna get, and it was
perfect.
If I'm saying Deep Space Nine is the game changer, that episode obviously was the beginning game changer.
I loved your framing it as intentional, thoughtful, brilliant. This was no if you think about 90s daytime television, the culture was just eating up human conflict, but it was mindless, impassioned, gross human conflict. It was Ricky Lake, and it was so this was conflict that was written to teach us and to tell a good story and to teach us about resolution, to teach us about, the consequences of our actions. It was so thoughtfully done. Love it. Nathan, what's your take?
Yeah, I just especially love the word commitment that kind of came out of it, that both Cisco and Deep Space Nine are about kind of this faithfulness to a particular community and place, and one that he kind of has to be dragged into, but about the ability to find a sense of home and belonging in a place that maybe was not the first that you would have picked, but that you find yourself there. And that's actually was deeply compelling to me when I first saw Emissary, when I had just kind of moved from one place to another. And I think too, just there's sometimes you just hear people saying well, with all this conflict and arguing, it lowers or demeans the characters. But it's something that's going to happen. There are those differences that exist, and there are the tensions that are going to emerge. And to show characters that are able to live with that and work towards, if not resolution, at least understanding and coexistence. I think that's just such a higher value, rather than just being well, here's our kind of characters on a pedestal who were never on a pedestal to begin with. They've always had issues. Right. And to say, hey, this is where we are, and these are the people here. And we're not just going to kind of move off to the next station or the next planet, but we're going to make it work with this community. And I think that was just a really, really beautifully affirmed from that.
Great breakdown, you guys. Great pick. Okay, round one, number one pick for Nathan. What do you got?
All right, let's talk more about why Deep Space Nine is awesome.
Yeah, let's do that some more.
All right, wait, this is a 3-parter, #Trek World Building. And I'm picking Deep Space Nine's The Circle.
That's for Jim. Do you know how much Jim loves The Circle?
I can't believe you're picking World Building and The Circle trilogy. So good.
Yeah, Let me start off personally. So I started watching Deep Space Nine in the pandemic, and it was one of those. It was early in the pandemic where like time did not matter. So I was watching, the Homecoming and then The Circle, and I'm like watching it like in bed at like 11 o'clock, and then suddenly it's, to be continued. I'm like, what is going on here?
Dude, let me just break it. I mean, I had the exact same reaction in 1993, right? Exact same reaction.
Yeah, and it was pushing midnight, and I was just like, and my wife is on the other side of the bed, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna keep the earbuds in, and I'm just gonna keep going.
Gotta do it.
And there was just nothing else has kind of pulled me in like that, and like this was the episode where like I became a Trek fan. Like this was it. I mean, Emissary is just like a deep place in my heart, but this was the place where like this is something that is just compelling and is just bringing me in. And all the elements had kind of been floating around in season one. You have the provisional government, the Vedics, the militia, the role of the Cardassians, all that stuff is just kind of floating around. But this was the first time where Trek really gave a truly integrated, comprehensive look into like, this is what this society is. This is the way that these actors interact with each other and the tensions that are between them and even within some of those factions. And here's the way in which the Federation is attempting to navigate that, while like there's the Cardassians who are attempting to exploit it. And I just don't think Trek had ever been that big or had ever really kind of brought the pieces together as clearly as this did as to what a society is like and how it's interacting with others. And I think it was the beginning of what Deep Space Nine would be, and it just kind of raised the bar for what storytelling and world building would be for Trek.
Well, spectacular choice, phenomenal. This is where it was entrenched, where that world building was entrenched. Brooke, what's your take? So incredible.
Yeah, our picks really go well together. I mean, it's what you're describing is that commitment again, right? Like we get this huge scope, and then they're like, and you're gonna see them next week, and then the next week, and then for X number more seasons. I mean, yeah, it was huge. It was huge.
Well, let's do this. So, because my number one pick goes right alongside yours. It's not Deep Space Nine, but let's just do it. 5 words and a hashtag. Trek's framework built via clip show, hashtag game-changing expansion. I should have just said game-changing world building, because that's what my pick's about too. And this is TOS, season 1, episode 15 and 16, The Menagerie.
Yeah.
And this is where, so I love your pick. So your pick is where, because it did it for me too, right? I mean, it was a year later when I was watching Past Tense when I went, I think Deep Space Nine is my favorite all-time Star Trek show, because it just that when it just sneaks up on you. And watching this 3-parter is when I was just like, wait, what is this show? This is a 3-parter? What? That's like mind-blowing in 1993. I mean, just changed everything. Absolute huge game changer. But it all started, and it's the foundation of it. And I've talked about this before on TrekRanks. I apologize to listeners. It's that decision by Gene Roddenberry in The Menagerie to repurpose all of that, the cage footage from the failed original pilot from 1964, 3 years prior, and turn it into this 2-part masterpiece. He was doing it to save money and time. And what he did, and I've said this before, I can't even imagine if I was watching TV in 1966 and all of a sudden this sci-fi show has all this other sci-fi footage in it. And it's like, yeah. I know, I mean, back then production wasn't, behind the scenes stuff wasn't knowledgeable and wasn't out there and available to people, but you'd be like, how the hell did they do this? What is this show?
Seemed like the most high budget episode you can imagine.
Incredible. And it's the exact opposite. So, and my whole point of this pick is that it was decisions like that are the key to making Star Trek this pop culture zeitgeist that has lived for 60 years and is going to live forever in people's consciousness, because it built this real future history that just had all this world building. It just feels lived in and feels like it has weight and importance and all those things added to it. So yeah, just incredible. So the Menagerie is one of my all-time favorites, and I think its place in making Trek what it is today cannot be overstated in world building, just like the Circle trilogy and the choice for Deep Space Nine to break into thoughtful, intentional conflict. Brilliant first round. I love this. Brooke, what's your take on this?
I feel like we just all do a little Bajoran clap for ourselves in this
incredible
this round one. And I mean, I like hearing you talk about what it was like sort of experiencing this, because I went back and watched this after I'd watched a ton of other Star Trek. And so I love hearing and having your perspective in like how it wowed you, how it made you feel, because isn't that's like the ultimate way to define a game changer, is how it impacts the viewer. And even aside from that, I mean, Strange New Worlds, like what would we not have had they not made the choices that they made for that two-parter? Like, it's truly changed Trek. It's spotted itself through Trek for decades.
It really has. Nathan, any final take?
Yeah, just the very idea that this show, which is largely episodic, but that it has a connection to the past, and then it has a connection to kind of a larger universe that's not just kind of like, who we pop in on, but something that is very intentional and well constructed. And that was actually on my secondary systems too, along with Amok Time, where it just kind of lays the groundwork for what we would consider to be the Trek universe.
Yep, that would be another one in terms of that big world building, which is world building's on my long list. Not sure we can do it now. We just kind of covered it in round one of Game Changers. Okay. Incredible. All right, let's get some secondary systems picks. Brooke, rattle off a few.
Let's see what you can do with the secondary systems.
All right, so I thought about Ira Stephen Bear taking over as showrunner of Deep Space Nine.
Love it.
Because we got arcs upon arcs upon arcs. I thought about holosuites, but being for profit instead of for like educational or training purposes or like this wholesome content.
How is that a game changer?
I don't know.
Frank, a game changer. Yep.
The development of the warp drive, obviously universe changing. Picard's assimilation by the Borg as obviously a game changer for a specific character. And then as I was thinking about, the violations with these butterfly effects, I also thought about the various temporal violations and sort of the game-changing effects, but that idea felt a little too nebulous to nail down. And then ultimately, I really just wanted to pick Star Trek because it's been a game changer in like everyone's lives who's listening to this show. But that's where I said it would mess up your stats. So you didn't pick it.
Yeah, it's a great secondary systems pick. Star Trek, that's my secondary system choice. Nathan, how about you?
It's like, top that.
Yeah.
So running through mine, the Discovery episode, if memory serves, being the moment where kind of newer Trek is integrated really well into that existing universe. Enterprise, bringing Manny Cotto on as head writer and showrunner.
Yeah.
Women characters getting Starfleet uniforms. Deanna Troi, Kira Nerys, 7 of 9. Just always, everybody looks good in a Starfleet uniform. And on that note too, changing the command color to red for the next generation, because I cannot imagine Patrick Stewart in gold. I just don't think it would work.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a game changer for sure.
And then the 2009 movie brought Trek back.
Yes.
It raised the standards of what it would look like, of just like the visual effects there. And I think also introducing the concept of the destruction of Romulus, which has really had a lot of repercussions throughout the franchise. And then my final one is DS9's episode Heart of Stone, where a character that just was very minor and borderline annoying, suddenly Nog's arc takes off on this episode, and it's a game changer for him and a game changer for what Trek would do with what has previously been considered background characters.
Game changer for in-universe and production universe of Trek. No, again, Aaron Eisenberg, incredible. Love that pick. Awesome. I have to rattle off a few of mine. I had my toughest cut. I wanted to pick Remembrance from Star Trek Picard. It was a game changer. It's a new kind of Star Trek show, one that I love, but I get that some people don't love it. But I thought that was a cool change in narrative. My secondary systems, I had Scorpion, 7 of 9, introduced as a Borg as a main character. I had I, Mud as the first comedy episode. I thought about that one. I really wanted to pick Context is for Kings, but I already chose it for Improvements with Spore Drive and Black Alert, but that was just a big game changer in terms of how it introduced the series. And then for Discovery, I also thought of Such Sweet Sorrow or That Hope Is You Part 1 as the jump to the 32nd century, but that was one of Ross Webster's picks in Improvements. And then I'll give my special shout out, our first prequel episode, Broken Bow from Star Trek Enterprise. It's my special shout out. Okay, incredible topic, you guys. Let's get into our regeneration cycle because I got some great stats and I want to recap everybody's picks.
Computer, activate regeneration cycle. Alcoves beta and gamma.
Okay, Brooke, break down your 5 really quick.
Number 5 was the Doctor's mobile emitter, an in-universe choice. Number 4 was the augmented reality wall for a production choice. Number 3 was the accidental contamination of alien societies. It sounds like an office. That should be like an office building at Starfleet. But number 2 was the Bajoran wormhole, and number 1 was character conflict being intentional in Deep Space Nine.
Love it. So you had 2 from Deep Space Nine and 1 each from TOS, Voyager, and Strange New Worlds. I am tracking production. You had 2 production choices, 3 in universe. Nathan, break down your 5.
All right, number 5 was the upgrades to Deep Space Nine's defenses and DS9, The Way of the Warrior. Number 4 was track embracing gay rights in Next Generation's The Outcast.
So good.
Number 3 was Jonathan Frakes' directorial debut in TNG's The Offspring. Number 2 was Jerry Goldsmith being brought on to compose the score for the motion picture. And then finally at number 1, just Deep Space Nine's world building being elevated to a new level in Deep Space Nine's The Circle.
I love it. So you had 2 each from TNG and Deep Space Nine and 1 from TOS, the motion picture, and you had 3 production choices. And then my 5, again, I just chose episodes. So from TNG, number 5 was Data's Day, kind of a breaking of the mold for telling these kind of low-key stories. Number 4 from Lower Decks, Moist Vessel. Lower Decks kind of changing the way all Trek is viewed and basically giving us a TNG episode in 22 minutes of an animated show. Number 3 was from Short Trek's Calypso, a game changer for what it did for Discovery and the future of Trek and what it still could be. And number 2, Deep Space Nine, The Wire, introducing us to intelligence agencies across the board, forever and always in Trek from that point on. And number 1, The Menagerie from TOS for the world building framework that it helped establish in Trek. So I guess my 5 are all in universe episode picks, but they're also kind of production picks. So they're a little bit of both, but I'm not counting them in our production count. So I had 1 each from TOS, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Lower Decks, and Short Treks, Not by Design. And okay, some quick stats here. So we only had 1 repeat mention from the Improvements show. That was, I can't remember what it was now, but it was a secondary systems reference in Improvements. So that is cool. And then we had 10 in-universe picks and 5 straight-up production choices. And our episode breakdown is great. We covered a lot of ground. We had 1 each from Voyager, Strange New Worlds, Short Treks, and Lower Decks. And then our OG Trek, we had 3 each from TOS and TNG, and 5 from Deep Space Nine. and we had one film mentioned as well. So awesome breakdown. Join us again on episode 223 when we do one-word titles, top 5 one-word titles. Okay, let's get into our temporal inversion. That was kind of temporal inversion we just did right there. Let's do it. It's time to hear from you.
Initiate temporal inversion.
Initiating.
And for this week's temporal inversion, we're going back to episode 166 in our super fun live show we did from STLV recently. The topic was the best deaths. Just like that, not top 5 deaths, but the best deaths. There's a big difference. And we got in a shit ton of great lists, just so many. And we've never done this before in 171 episodes of Trek Ranks. But since this episode is all about game changers, we're doing it now. Our first list, he doesn't know this yet, is from Mr. Nathan Royster, at Nathan Royster on Twitter. Fantastic list, my man. I was going through, I was saying, okay, I'm going to scan all my feedback. Oh, this list is great. Oh, it's Nathan. I can't do that. Yes, I can. Here we go. So you said you hadn't listened yet, but here we go. 5 words and hashtag. Having the ultimate Excedrin moment, hashtag headsplode random officer death in TNG. That's where silence has lease. Of course, that's the famous GIF of the guy at the con having his head exploded. Number 4, the way the crewman crumbles, hashtag dust to dust. And it's, of course, one of my picks, transformed into a hexagon, crushed in TOS by any other name. Number 3, overexcited. I love this pick. Overexcited Olsen telegraphs imminent death, hashtag deploy your parachute. Of course, that's Star Trek 2009 and the drilling platform death of Olsen. Number 2, should have let him sleep, hashtag off camera head crusher. Of course, the death of Admiral Marcus, murdered by Khan in Into Darkness. And number 1, crashing through glass perfect scene, hashtag meeting adjourned. Worf kills Gowron in Deep Space Nine, tacking into the wind. Hilarious 5 words and a hashtag, dude. Great list.
Good list.
You're
so
too
good.
kind.
I love it. All right, and then one more quick list. This is from our friend Deb Moltisanti at Silverdo25 on Twitter. Her list was all lower decks, including 2 amazing picks. And when she sent the list in, she did not actually know how impactful her picks were going to be because season 4 had not wound down yet. So here we go. It's her lower decks, the best deaths list. And her number 5 pick, that guy who ascended in Moist Vessel. There you go. Number 4, Boimler's transporter clone from Crisis Point 2 Paradoxes, who's not really dead. Number 3, Shax in No Small Parts, which of course he died and then came back. Number 2, this is great. Boimler in the Cradle of Vexilon died and then came back. And then this is the one, I just can't believe this. Number 1, Cedo Jaxa from the actual episode Lower Decks. And the fact that we get to hear her name again and see her again in a flashback at the end of Lower Decks season 4, just incredible. Old friends, new planets. I love it. And then she had 1 secondary system pick. So she obviously picked this after watching the first couple episodes of season 4 of Lower Decks. She picked the Klingon captain, Maha, in Wage 2, whom we all thought he was dead for half the season. I was like, I can't believe they killed that guy. And then, of course, he came back at the end of the season. Incredible. I love this list. The best deaths.
That's incredible that everybody listed as dead actually is alive right now.
Right. Pretty much. All right. So once again, those picks more than enough to clear ourselves from this week's temporal inversion. So as always, I want to thank everyone for all your great responses to the Trek Ranks podcast. Keep your list coming to me at Trek Ranks on Twitter so we can retweet them. But we also want to hear from you. Put together your own list of top 5 game changers or a list from any of our past shows. Give us a call at the Tricorder Transmissions at 609-512-5527. Or just record a list and send me a DM on Twitter and we can connect that way. So hopefully we'll hear from you so you can be featured on the next episode of Trek Ranks. And on the next episode of Trek Ranks, we got another fun one for you. We're returning to our favorite, most popular scenes in Trek series for the 15th time.
Oh my God.
This time we're doing, I cannot wait. I haven't started brainstorming on this yet. Top 5 scenes on an alien ship. So much fun. Top 5 scenes on an alien ship. So Brooke and Nathan, if you had to choose one that just pops into your head right now, a scene on an alien ship, what would you pick, Brooke?
Oh God.
There's so many.
Oh my God, this is so hard. The first thing that popped into my head, honestly, was the crashed ship where we meet Jet Reno.
Oh,
but is that
fantastic.
a Federation ship? Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay, Nathan, you go. I'll think of one.
We'd have to disqualify you for that. That's how it works on. You would be off the show. That's how it works on TrekRanks. Nathan,
I'm gonna go with the crashed Jim Hadar ship in DS9's The Ship.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's such a good one. Okay, Brooke, what do you got?
Okay, how about the voyage home and all the scenes?
Yes, of course.
On the Klingon ship.
So many. So you guys both picked episodes with a lot of scenes on an alien ship without picking a scene. I love that. Cheaters. So good.
Okay, did we
do my top 5 just from that one episode.
Exactly.
Okay.
You could do 5 from just those episodes.
Channel closed. Reset. Subspace communications. Scrambler code, Riker 1.
Scrambler code, Riker 1. Acknowledged. All right. We're going to close this episode out with a huge thanks to Brooke Horton and Nathan Royster. Incredible episode. Incredible list. It was awesome having you guys on. So any final Trek Scrambler code you want to relay before we depart, Brooke?
No, but thank you for not having banished me for any of my future or my past choices, and connecting and doing this episode also kind of revived my wanting to get connected back into Twitter, which I actually appreciate. I've missed it a lot, so I'm glad of that. So
there's still a lot of good out there on Twitter.
Yeah, for sure.
It's harder to find these days, but Nathan, thanks for coming back on, man.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Brooke. It was just a delight, and just keep elevating your game out there.
I love it. Couple of game changers. Here we go. Thank you, everyone, for engaging with us here on episode 171 of the TrekRanks podcast. As always, I want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
The Merced is here to ensure the Generation ship is preserved during transportation, and I want everyone to give them full support. Captain Durango and I both served on the Illinois many years ago, and it is a true delight to be able to work with him again. Trouble sleeping, Ensign?
Nah, I slept great. I mean, maybe too good, honestly.
Just distribute the pads.
Starfleet believes this alien is...
Just want to remind everyone again that the entire TrekRanks catalog is available for you to download and listen to at TrekRanks.com and on your podcast player of choice. Our episodes never get carbon dated, so check out the topics you've missed and maybe just want to listen to again over at TrekRanks.com. And a reminder to check out our friends 5-Year Mission at 5yearmission.net. They're writing a song for every episode of Star Trek, and you won't believe how great their music is. They also have a podcast at the Trek Geeks Network, so seek them out. You won't regret it.
A delicate procedure. Even the slightest flux in tractor beam stabilization could damage.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. It is just so much information. I don't know how you guys aren't yawning.
Your crew doesn't appear to appreciate the gravity of our undertaking, Captain.
I assure you, Captain, my people are the best in the fleet. They're proficient, alert, and... Mariner!
I am trying to hold it in.